Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. I'm joined by a very special guest. Well, everyone's a special guest to me. I'm joined by brother Elgin Ford. Now, this is funny. You know how it is with the podcast. I meet so many people in the world of alpha. I meet them all over the country and legit have not met them face to face, but I meet them in a digital space. And then I ask them to be on my podcast and solicit them because they're experts or they're great people all over in the world. And so I think we've been communicating almost a year though, which has been crazy, pretty remarkable via text. I've been yet to see this brother face to face, but I send him random memes and communications and through that brotherhood. So it really shows that even in this virtual space, I feel like I got friends and camaraderie and brotherhood. But Before we go into this episode, which I have been Brother Ford and his experience in his work life, give the listeners a little introduction of yourself.
Sure. My name is Elgin. Obviously, Phil said that already. I'm originally from Atlanta. I grew up in Latonia, which is like East Atlanta. It's in metropolitan, but not like Atlanta. I am the eldest of three. I grew up with both my parents in the home. I went to undergrad in Philadelphia at Drexel. Okay. I played basketball there for a couple of years. Then I just finished this. Actually, technically, it's almost 2 years ago now. But I graduated in May 2019 with my master's from Cornell. So I'm pretty hype about now being in the working world and outside of school, because I've been in school all my life, right? So just adjusting to the work world now is kind of where I'm at in life. Yeah.
So it's very interesting. So let's go right into it. So you graduated in May with your master's. Shout out to you. That's quite a remarkable thing to do. But you got a job, and we call I think I've heard the word unprecedented times like 1,000 times. But yes, you graduated with a job. Can you explain to listeners what you do for employment and how gaining employment was during COVID? Like, how did you get a job during this time?
So I actually didn't. So I had my job prior to COVID. So I graduated, so I think I may have misspoke. So I graduated in May 19. So for me, also I'll back up. So I work for Ernst & Young. Normally it's just an accounting, big four firm, like audit and tax, but they do have a pretty big consulting advisory practice. My specific practice is in government and public sector. My client is the Army. I think that's about how much I'm allowed to say, but generally I do like strategy and audit readiness and financial compliance. So basically I put out fires for my client. That's what I do. I think for me, at least what I'm seeing now, because I am involved in recruiting for my company with college students and whatnot, new hires that are coming in and fresh out of undergrad and grad school. I think one of the biggest things that I've seen is individuals are a little more direct when it comes to asking certain questions about, security of employment. My company hasn't done any layoffs and they don't plan on doing them. They're taking more of a top-down approach where the partners who are supposed to retire years ago, they're giving them retirement packages and utilizing that extra money to, sustain and withhold all of their employees. So UI hasn't seen any layoffs, which I'm kind of happy about, but we've been in this virtual work environment since the end of February now. So, it's been a while. It's definitely been an adjustment. But yeah.
So you're working in a corporate space. And, the listeners are not going to be able to see you, but you're Black. So what is that like? This is not a video podcast, it's an audio podcast, but maybe explain that experience, and maybe particularly like your experience, Cornell, which is a predominantly white institution. Maybe talk about your experience in that graduate program and also transitioning to the work world,
Sure.
being a man of color, a black male.
Sure.
Were you, very few in your program, and is there very few of you in your occupation space?
Sure. So I'll start with the grad school experience. First of all, like Cornell was amazing. I think I learned a lot just about myself, and then also being in, that Ivy League environment. Like you really get a sense of what that means, and there's some false reality there that people have about that space. But yeah, so I was one of three black males in my cohort, and technically one of two because one of them was in a like did the program off cycle, so they didn't even graduate. They graduated a semester before us. So and actually me and the other guy who were the only two males and the black males in our program are like best friends. I'm actually going to see him this weekend, so I'm hyped about that. And one of the things that you notice is that, when you get to higher education, black women outrank number wise black males. And one of the things I learned was that there's so much to be said in having a community and getting the support, right? Because I didn't really think that I acknowledged how stressed I was, or even the more work and more energy I had to put in to just be on par with all of our counterparts, right? And I'm not the person that only wants to be on par, right? Like I'm trying to surpass, I'm trying to leave people in the dust. Like I'm trying to do all these different things. And then you get to a point where like there's a burnout, because there is, if you're not taking care of yourself, taking care of that mental health, taking care of that physical health, and just understanding that you are, in a tough environment. Ithaca is a very, very, very rough place to be as somebody who's in their 20s. It's not really a city vibe. It's definitely a college town vibe. But even as a grad student, you only see sun here maybe like 3 months out the year. And those 3 months, you're usually doing an internship somewhere else. So when it comes October all the way to March, sometimes April, it's overcast, it's cold. You're like walking to class and like, why did I choose to do this? But I will say that one thing that kept me going was, like I said, the environment, the community I had, because there was a huge, it's called BGPSA, which is like the Black Graduate and Professional Students Association. It's the equivalent to a BSU for undergrad. And that was a saving grace, an oasis in the desert, if you will, just to be able to have that community and find people that are experiencing something similar and be able to lean on them. And another thing I kept in mind was that like I'm here because I also want to put myself in a really good position to have a job, when I graduate. So my second year was really tough because of it was tough not only because of just like trying to graduate, but then also trying to secure a job. I wasn't trying to just like do all this for nothing, right? Or do all this and then at the end of it start thinking about, oh, what do I want to do, right? So a lot of things are building up and piling up as we go through, those 2 years being at Cornell. But then around like April timeframe, my second year, I secured a interview through one of the guys at who was actually, he graduated. So I did a master's in public administration. He did his master's in, he got his business degree at Cornell. He works at EY. And it was kind of interesting to see how networking outside of my own program and outside of my own space rendered very favorable results. When you're doing something or looking for something, you lean on the people that you're closest with to say, hey, I'm job hunting, looking for different opportunities in consulting or different opportunities in the healthcare space or a public sector space. And then not really seeing the results, so then needing to branch out. I think that was also kind of tough too, because I was just like, we have all these Black alums and Cornell is filled with them. And even if you go to like New York City, you go to DC, you go to California, you go to Chicago, you go to Atlanta, all these different Cornell alums, and it's just like I wasn't getting results that I wanted. And it took some time, but I was like, what, I gotta just like keep doing what is right, what I need to do, which is network. So I networked with this guy. We had breakfast one day. It's actually funny. We had breakfast before I was about to go out of town. He was like, "Do you mind? Like, can we push it back a little bit?" And I was like, Sure." So I pushed it back, had a conversation. I think we had that conversation on a Friday. That Monday, I heard from a recruiter from EY and was just like, "I want to schedule some time to talk. We got your resume from blah 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 blah." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And then that turned into an interview with a hiring manager. And then that turned into another like virtual interview. They do this little like platform where you gotta say your name and answer all these questions in the camera. And it's kind of weird because nobody, like, you're not getting any feedback from anybody. So it just looked like you talking into the camera.
Yeah.
And then I found out a couple days later that I got a job offer, and I snatched it up quick. And because I was like, this is where I want to be. This is the field I want to be in. I got a really good brand, a really good name. And then I think one of the things that I started thinking about was, okay, so what does that transition look like from being a college student to being a working young professional? Understanding that EY my company does a good job of, diverse, like actually living that diversity and inclusion, paradigm that a lot of companies talk about, but you don't really see like the practice. Like EY is living it and showing it, which I thought was a really good thing. And I was just trying to figure out how to be intentional about maintaining a good, I guess, like practice of like maintaining a good, like my health, right? And then also making sure that I'm putting myself in the best position to succeed in that space.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
So basically, you was living like when you was at Cornell, you was living the life of the jewels there. You know what I'm saying? I was thinking about that the whole time you was talking about, like, just like, man, this place is not a party place, and it's jury, and I was like, man, I was trying to visualize like that experience. You had to go out of your way. And then one of the things I did note that was like, for particularly in Black spaces, I kind of identify with that too. Is like, I'm the one Black male in my office, right? In my office right now. But you said something I really aligned with was getting outside of your department, or and you said it, outside of your program to connect. And so obviously you got to look sometimes as a Black male, from what I see, is that you have to get outside of your immediate bubble to connect with other professionals, as opposed to other ones. And so I just kind of gravitated to that. But you did that with other programs. Can you like go back to that? Was that your forethought when you joined the Black graduate student program? Was like, yo, I gotta, like, because I'm in this cohort with like only one other Black guy, I gotta get outside of my department to connect with people across the campus?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I don't necessarily think that was my I don't necessarily think that was my like initial thought. My initial thought was that I'm coming right out of undergrad, and I need to be around people that, one, I can enjoy being around, turn up when we're ready, and like be able to work and grind when we need to, and having that support outside of just, because it was only in my class was like one of the biggest classes. We had like 64 people.
For your cohort?
Yeah, for my cohort, it was only like 60, 64, 65, but there were only...
That's a large graduate program, honestly, across the country. I mean, particularly, that's pretty significantly large. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and the class behind us was only 32, and the class before us was only like 27. So
wow,
I don't know. Maybe they needed some more money.
They needed that tuition, that graduate tuition. They were like, aggressive. Some money. Let's accept all these people. But I'm just teasing. So you were in a significantly large graduate program, but still, even out of 60, there was only 8 of us.
Well, there was only 8 Black people total.
Yeah, so wow.
And it was technically 2 males and then 6 females.
Yes.
And we all leaned on each other mostly for like support within our program, but then we also were able to find some bit of like solace in, BGPSA in the org. And then also for me specifically, like finding other alpha brothers around, and connecting with them to like help with the support outside of Cornell, right? Because Ithaca is small, so you're going to meet a lot of people that work at IC or work in the city or do different things around Ithaca. But I think growing up, I was always like my father was very intentional about relationships and how important those are. So I think that always stuck with me. So even in undergrad, Drexel has a co-op program, so you work for 6 months out of the year. And I worked in California, and I worked at Toyota in California, and I was the only black male in that space, and the only black person who was working for Toyota that wasn't a consultant. So I mean, I've always had these moments where I'm, the
one.
yeah, like the little, like the drop,
Yeah.
the little droplet in the water. But I think it's an advantage to some point because of the fact that people are, if you have the right people, they're definitely more receptive to helping and being open. And I think one thing I did enjoy about Cornell was that alumni were so fixated on helping students. No matter where you're from, if they can help you, like they're willing to help. And if they can't help, they're like, I know somebody who does this. I can put you in contact with them. And that was something that it took some. It didn't take long, but it definitely took a couple of times to adjust to. Because in my mind, you know, people only help to the capacity that they want to, right? So in my mind, it's like, all right, if you can't directly help me, like that's it, like that's the end of the conversation, that's the end of the relationship. And I think I was also I noticed that was a thing when I was in Philly in undergrad too, a little bit, where I was like looking for internships, and I was like, oh, like, do you know anybody who does this or anybody who does that? And they're like, no, I'm sorry. I'm just like, okay, cool.
Yeah, conversation.
But at Cornell was way different.
Like speed dating. You're like, oh, but I think that you nailed it on the head about particularly establishing relationships. And what I've learned is that necessarily it's like passing on blessings. Like if I don't know something, I try to delegate and like, I don't know anyone that does this, but let me ask around. And that's like literally just, you can ask around. And also like being transparent with networking. Like when someone asks me something, a question, if someone like wants to, mentorship, whatever, I'm like, I'll be totally transparent. I don't know what I'm doing in this pocket. Let me ask around. But also like, there's other expertise that you can give. Like, oh, I don't know anything about Toyota, but I know someone that works at Honda. Like you
definitely
kind of leverage that. And I love that. And I think, and you talked about it too, is that I don't know if I had the term correctly, but the double-edged sword of what's it called? Like the minority advantage, meaning because you are like, there's a two-edged sword. Like because you are the minority, there's a high instance of isolation or imposter syndrome, all that. But on the flip side, sometimes and I hate saying this, you get the spotlight on you, and it kind of spotlights you. Like people are going to ask you for things just because you're the black person on campus. So there's a two-edged sword. Like hey, what do you think about this? I was like, I don't know, but because I'm black, they're going to ask me. So that's an advantage. I get a lot of outreach coming to me because of my presence. But on the flip side, it's that edge. It's like, damn, man, they only asking me because I'm black. But I've gotten opportunities that maybe necessarily one of my white counterparts won't get because they're not going to ask them to be on a D&I task force as quickly as me.
Right.
That's the new thing, right? So, can you speak upon that? Because you kind of touched upon that, like that minority disadvantage, the two-edged, the part where it has been beneficial being a black male in a space of predominantly white people, but then also the times where it's not an advantage, it's harmful to well-being or not a good vibe.
Yeah, I think I mean you really dug into a little bit more there than I did, but one of the things I noticed is that you have two different experiences with that, right? You have the experience where on the one and there you have two different experiences for the same exact moment or the same exact happening, because on one side you're like, okay, wow, great, that's a good opportunity, good exposure, but then on the other side it's like, why me? Like, why do I have to do why? Right? Because sometimes that can get exhaustive and exhausting, but also on the other hand, you're just like, I don't like, this isn't what I want to be known for doing. Is like, I don't want every time there's a D&I initiative that you want me because, like I have some kind of experience, or you think that I may be able to speak to this, or, I'm a good image, or I represent this. So you think that if I say this, that other people will align with that. There's so many different, parts to that. But I think one thing I accepted a little early on was that when you are in certain spaces, you can articulate yourself very well, and you're being invited to do different things that, it's a bit of a blessing because of the fact that, you can shed light for someone where it may impact somebody that looks like you down the road in a more positive sense than it has been negative previously. So I definitely take that into account and understanding of those moments. But I think it also kind of comes with the territory too, right? If you're going to be in these spaces and you're going to be doing, outreach or, community service, being a public servant, which is something that I've always strived to be and want to do going forward, is that those are going to be moments where you have to speak on those, speak on those situations, and even being able to just support and be on a board for like an initiative, like how at Cornell, when I was there were some a lot of racially charged events that happened, and they had the president did a task force, and actually my sponsor for Alpha is on the task force. So being able to like hear about his experience and being able to pull from that to even apply those to some of my own within my own program. I mean, even now, so I don't know if I told you this previously, but my client, like the Army project, the Army account for my company, has the highest concentration of Black professionals in my entire company. And then the location in Tyson's EY, that branch has the highest concentration of Black professionals at EY.
Okay. That's a positive. So it's like, wow, like,
yeah,
you going into a highly Black space professionally,
yeah,
which is not
yeah. It's not normal.
Luxury. It's not normal. Exactly. That's what
it's not normal at all. Yeah. And then being able to have people, senior managers and senior leadership that you can, talk to, reach out to, be frank with, because there's sometimes I'm just like, yo, we need to talk. Yeah. And then the thing is that community is very important. And I have to say that most of my mentors, most of my people that are like advocates for me, most of the people that are really helping me grow and have helped me grow, have been mostly women. And I'm even more appreciative to be able to see a Black woman or a Black color woman in leadership now at EY, and like seeing how well they handle those moments and handle those spaces. And I think that pulling from the advice that they give me, and then even just like seeing them in action has really helped to like shape and mold my progress and transition from that college space, right? Because being a new hire out of college and being a college intern are two different things.
Yeah. Well, I got like I said, like my mind is thinking of questions next, but I'm gonna hold that one about the differences. Let me make sure I come back to that. But
you gotta jot that one down.
Yeah, I had to write that one down. But what I'm hearing, and one of the questions I do have next is, particularly for me, and I heard about it, is like you said, leadership or mentorship. I'm definitely very blessed to have a supervisor and a leader that's a woman of color support me. That has been tremendous on my career. I think I've really taken off because of that direct support. But what is the values or the things that you look for when you say I gravitate to mentorship? How would you recommend, or what do you do to find mentorship where physically you don't have the opportunity to have a Black male mentor? So what are some of the things you evaluate when you see a woman to say, okay, we are gender different, but I want you to be my mentor because you had the same, like, what are some factors? Because I do have a lot of mentors across races, across gender identities, religion, because there's some things that I really look for someone that's a mentor, regardless of that, the very universal values, like at least the person got to be kind, share the thoughts on this. And so I don't, there's some ways there's like, if I have to have a mentor that is different from me, that we still are aligned in certain things. So what are some things that you look for someone to give you mentorship in a space where you might not necessarily get the opportunity to have a Black male mentor?
Got you. So I'm an extrovert, just plain and simple. So if I see a person that I'm like attracted to in terms of energy, in terms of like what they're doing, in terms of just being intrigued by who they are, I'm gonna ask. I'm gonna say, hey, like my name's Elgin. Like if I'm a new hire, I'm saying, hey, my name's Elgin. I just started here not too long ago. Wanted to know if we could find some time to just chat. I would love to know like what you're doing on this project, what you're doing here, and just being able to like to have an initial conversation to see where that goes. Because my thing is, outside looking in, I don't really know anybody, right? I could sit here and say that like, I know who, like I knew who my partner was before I talked to her, just because like I've seen her in meetings, I've heard her on phone calls. That doesn't mean anything. So being able to know if they're kind, being able to know if they're going to tell me how it is, like I don't like anything sugar coated. I don't care how good, bad, happy, or sad it is. So those different characteristics and those features in an individual, I think, are important. But to answer your question, to be very candid answering your question, I think it's just a matter of how the chips fall. I don't go like seeking out, like I don't have specific things where I'm just like, I need you to do this or I need you to do that. Because I think what mentorship does and affords us the opportunity to do is pull from a lot of different places regardless, right? I don't want someone who has the same exact outlook as I do, because the thing is, I need a different perspective. I need somebody to view this differently than I do, because to be fair, like I want something different. I don't want exactly what I think, right? I'm not coming to you to get my ideas and thoughts reassured. Now, if that happens, perfect. That means I could be on the same track, right? But if not, it gives me something else to think about in consideration to what I'm, considering. I know I use that word twice, but I hope that makes sense.
I like that too. I like sounding. It's kind of like what you look for is a sounding board, but also you
Yeah.
don't want a yes person. You like, Phil, did you think about this? I'm like, no, not a clue. I'm glad I didn't think about this. That's why I have a mentor. I mean, for real, like, like I said, I think
Right.
that you don't want someone, you don't want a bunch of surround yourself. You want to surround yourself, like I said, the values part is I do want good energy. I like people that are kind, but they don't have to be extroverted like me. They be quiet. I'm the opposite, all those different things. But the very baseline is that I'm not going to look for a mentor that's a jerk. Like,
Right.
I'm not going for that. Like, that's not what I'm like. I don't care. I'm not gonna, I see that, like that movie Whiplash, where that guy wanted a mentor and the dude was a jerk to get excellence. That's like one of my line in the sands. Like, I don't want to chase excellence to deal with rude people. At the very bare minimum, I want common decency and someone that even if I look up to them, they treat me like a human being. I'm not going to be like, wow, this guy is the best in the field. He could talk to me any type of way. No, that's not what I'm looking for. I definitely want someone that's senior to me, someone that's elevated. I use, deference, our favorite word, deference. Deference. But at the same time, in regards to mentorship, across all, I want decency and respect. That's one of the things I look for. And then you're right. Like I definitely am open to feedback. When someone's like, yo, I don't think you were really on the right track. Here's some guidance. But at the core of it, I know that they're saying the contradicting or critiques because they want me to be better. They care about my progress rather than just like dump on me and, really just trash.
I think you hit the nail on the head right there, because a lot of times we view, I just think humans are like, can be very defensive when it's something that's like personal and dear to them, right? But I think one thing is we have to realize we take a risk looking at mentorship or having mentorship. I mean, if you're thinking about making a decision and you ask 4 or 5, 6 people, what their thoughts on what you're thinking, right? At the end of the day, you definitely have to make that decision. Plain and simple. There's no arguing that. But you take a risk, one, making that decision, period, even if you didn't have the mentors or the people or your sounding boards or your support system to give you feedback. But the thing is, we take risk regardless, and there's going to be risks associated with any decision we make. I think what I had to realize was that if I get as much information on, or as much insight, or as much understanding from those people that, have helped me get to where I am, I'm in a better position than if I just like saw one thing, I was like, I want this, right? Without doing any background, any research on it. Like risks are going to happen, they're going to be there, but it's less of a risk, or it's a more calculated risk if you're really digging in and using those people. So I say all that to say that, like, you do have to have, it takes time to build those relationships to be able to trust somebody enough with a big decision. For instance, like so I came into EY as a staff one, and I didn't realize or know this, but a senior, one of the black men on my, he's a senior manager at EY on the Army project, told me that, like, I really think that you may, have been brought in too low. So I was like, okay, like, I didn't really think about it. But then I started realizing that, like, a lot of the work I was doing was the work of somebody 2-3 levels above me. So, I started last October. I started October 2019. So he's like, I think you should, talk to your counselor and your manager and, try to submit for early promotion. And I was like, I just got here. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
But like, I started looking at a lot of the requirements that my company has for, the level above me. And I'm like, okay, I'm doing this. I'm leading the work stream. I interact directly with the client. They ask me my insight. They ask me to make decisions on things for them. So there's all these different things, indicators that are there, but then like having the people to support and guide, and even just say, Elgin, you need to do this.
And write it this way, and guidance. I love that.
Yeah.
And he gave you feedback.
And I ended up.
You end up doing it.
Yeah, and I actually found out last week I got promoted. And I was like, wow.
Look at Jesus. That's wonderful. But I think that's too, like, I know so many times where, like, someone I look up to sends me a text and said, did you think about applying to this? I was like, I didn't even know this existed, bro. Like, what are you talking about? That's because they had the life experience, like half of my opportunities has been like that. And I think it's that guidance. But I'm going to jump back. Like I said, I was going to go back to, I pivot a lot. So you said there was a big difference between being an entry-level worker and being an intern in your experience. Can you touch upon those differences?
Sure.
And also, can you add the blackness to that too? The fact that you're black to those two different spaces.
Right. An intern and a new hire, there's pressure as a new hire. You have, like, in most times you're salaried. Intern gets like a stipend. They don't really get that much work. It's just more like, network and make sure you take notes and all these like little things, right? And granted, new hires do have to do that. They do have to network. They do have to take notes. But the thing is, the stakes are much higher. And that experience is going to determine your internship is going to be determine if you may get a job offer after your internship, because I know EY only does like sophomores and juniors. But the thing is, you're asked to do more. There's not that much hand holding as a new hire. And to kind of break this down even further into what it's like as, a Black young professional coming in, on top of all of the things you have to go through, training, compliance, HR stuff, you'll have to adjust to your project. I'm speaking specifically from a more consulting space. Adjusting to your project, or even being on the bench. And the bench is basically like, you're not on a project right now, so you're not doing anything. You may be doing some internal stuff, but you're not staffed and billable. So even after you have all those things that most new hires have to experience, right? Then you have to deal with the fact that, one, you're probably going to be on a project where you may be one of few Black people. All right. So you're not getting, you're not seeing yourself in the work or in the client or in whatever you're doing. You're not seeing yourself back. Additionally, you will also have the experience of feeling, I think marginalized is the wrong word, but it's having the experience of a marginalized individual where people are overshadowing you. They're not asking you about X, Y, and Z. They're not asking your input. They're not engaging you. And I think the difference in experiencing that as a staff, as a new hire versus an intern, as an intern, honestly, you only have to put up, like, even if you don't want to put up with it and you choose to, like, you only have to deal with that for a short amount of time, like a few weeks. Like 10 weeks is a normal intern experience, right? So at week 7 or week 6, and you're starting to like feel this, you can really be like, I only have 5 weeks left, only have 4 weeks left. You could talk yourself through that. There's no talking yourself through a year or two of that as a new hire. And then you also have the mindset as a new hire that I can't make any waves. I don't want to have an issue with anybody. So I don't want to be blacklisted. So you're walking on eggshells and then still trying to produce, you're walking on eggshells and still trying to produce the same level of output as your counterparts. And honestly, it's expected of you to do that and even more just to be on par. So for somebody who isn't, just trying to make ends meet or barely meet a standard, you're trying to exceed those standards. You're putting a lot of stress. You're putting a lot of time. Statistically, young Black professionals are more likely to have loans than, your white counterparts, male or female, right? So even as the money is coming in, you're still like, oh, wow, I have to pay this. I have to do this. I have to do this. And a lot of times you can get to a point where you're not even enjoying the fact that you're a young professional, right? You're not enjoying the fact that, like, you have a job right out of school, you're in a city or you're somewhere where it's either new to you or it's familiar. If it's new, you can go explore, right? And if it's familiar, what you like to do and know what you want to do in that spare time. But the fact that, like, you're experiencing all these different dynamics at work, when you come home, that's not something you want to, like, you really just want to decompress. Sometimes you want to cry. Like, there's so many different variables and outputs to that. And I think a lot of times we, as individuals, right? Because I definitely believe it's a personality type, and basically it varies case by case. But I think we don't look at how much we actually experience as somebody who's a new hire. And granted, as you go up and as your level of progression and promotion through a company, or even if you jump from job to job, you'll experience different things at different levels, right? But specifically speaking from someone who is a new hire, who's just now getting into the job market as somebody Black, there's so much that you don't think about when you're in college, right? Because in college everything's a vacuum, right? It's in that space. If you need to find a diversity inclusion office, or if you need to find, if you want to go eat, if you want to like hang out with your friends, it's all kind of there and it's accessible. But once you're a young professional, things in life is a lot more spread out and it's a lot more open. So you don't think about those variables when you're like, hunting for a job. Like people, at least me and people in my program, when we were job hunting, not everybody was thinking about, oh, what's the diversity like, right? You kind of have those thoughts after you get the job, and then you're like, okay, like what's this X, Y, and Z? Like who's there? Who do I know that's there? What are some experiences that I want to make sure I have prior to? When personally, I think those are things we should be doing during and before we actually sign for a job. But those differences in being an intern versus being a Black intern versus being a Black new hire is completely different. And one of the biggest things is the time commitment, honestly.
I love it. And I'm going to share this. I'm going to send this to you later. This article I just read yesterday for the Washington Post, and I'll send it to you. But
Okay.
just a quick synopsis of it. It said that particularly amongst all race and gender, Black males still will have a likelihood of depression and anxiety regardless of their level of academic achievement and professional achievement. So from what I read the article, they say, okay, as you get a better job and a better level of education, the likelihood for white women, Black women, other races, maybe, the likelihood of experience those things decrease, the likelihood.
Mm-hmm.
Before they did like a study for Black men, there makes no difference, right? Like they literally said the likelihood of those things still affect. And they had 4 different cases that they referenced in that Washington Post article, saying like imposter syndrome, all that stuff. Just initial thoughts. That's a crazy fact. What do you think? Like, and from what I thought, I was like, dang, no matter how much I try to shine, I have to be proactive with my well-being, because other pockets, other demographic groups are you know, they get achievements and all that stuff. And it's like, yo, you get achievements, your likelihood of depression and anxiety might go down, right? Whatever.
Sure.
I get achievements, it might just put the more spotlight on me. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
It might increase my likelihood of imposter syndrome, like all these crazy things. What are your thoughts when you heard that? And I'll send you the article so you can read that more. But just initially, when you hear that revelation.
Immediately, I think it's the pressure. And I think that's a self-induced pressure. People that are, and I think that's the case across the board. Like people who want to do X, Y, and Z, people that are ambitious, people who are go-getters, people who like, regardless of you're introvert, extrovert, if you want to achieve something, there's a pressure that you place on yourself to do those things. And once you achieve that, granted, I don't think we do a good job of celebrating our wins appropriately. But after we know that we won, it's like, all right, what's next?
The next championship, man. You gotta go to next season. They already. But it's the mindset we already have with champions. And I watch a Jordan documentary. They're like, all right, I already won the championship. I got to do a two-peat. Then you get the two-peat. You're like, I got to do a three-peat. You know what I'm saying? Like the grind don't stop. But I think that it's even worse. I mean, I particularly feel as a black male, like, okay, cool. I got employee of the month. What about, employee of the decade? Like, I don't know. Like, you have to, like, you can't even celebrate it. I get that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No. I think that's right. And the frustrating part is that I still have to like tell myself certain things. I have to say, all right, look, putting too much on yourself. My girlfriend, we met at Cornell. She's a PhD student. She's going into her 5th year of biomedical engineering, and she is definitely somebody who understands all right, I have to do this, get here, and then like focus on the next thing, right? Sometimes she'll have to tell me like, hey, like let's celebrate this, let's enjoy this, and then we can focus on the next thing. And I definitely think that there's a certain connotation that comes along with that. I think one of the things that, at least for me as a black male, I think the dichotomy is that I want people in society to respect me, period. Like I just want the respect, right? So sometimes we equate the education, sometimes we equate the success, sometimes we equate the money, sometimes we equate all these different things to that, right? Because the thing is, for me growing up, even though I didn't see it I grew up in Atlanta. Outside of Atlanta, like Georgia is like any other southern state. So I see how disrespected, men are and black women, right? And my thing is, in those moments, we have tried and continuously do try to gain and get to these achievements, where, it comes down into like me interacting with just some regular person, like, anybody that sees me right now, and usually I don't even have my hair this high. Usually my hair is like low, like wavelength low, super low. I haven't grown my hair out since like undergrad, but like people may not see somebody who's well thought, well read, intelligent, can talk, athletic, can sing, like all these different things, right? All these different attributes, successes that I've had. I still may not be given the respect of somebody who, is owed that, right? And granted, I shouldn't have to have all of those either to be respected. But I think we still understand the reality that we live in, that, you need to have, a degree, right? And sometimes you need to have a master's degree now for certain jobs. And then if you think about, that's just society, right? That's just like all society. But then also if you dwindle it down to even our own community, like the women are more educated than us, like black women are more educated than black men.
I joke about. I say that all the time. I say, shout out to our black women. They carrying us. Like,
no fact.
I mean, look at the demographics, man. Come on, bro. Like you see that, and so, but it's like, dang, But I told you, I'm just getting so much transference right now. It's like, I walk into a room, and I think that all the time, consciously. Like, how am I proving myself? I felt like this, and then you say things to yourself like, I don't need to prove myself. Then you have this chip on you, like, I don't need to prove myself because I've already done all this stuff. But then you have to say, well, I still have to show up because I had to reaffirm that I was qualified or or capable. And so you had this balance of like, I don't care what people think, but then I have to show up in this space caring what people think. You know, like it's like this, this dichotomy. You know, I can't go to work looking like this. But like as you say, with my appearance, I'm smart. I know I got to say these self-affirmation things, but these are hidden identities that I don't think society has shown these identities explicitly linked to blackness or explicitly linked to black males of intelligence, kind, smart, well-read, all those things. Even like with a whole generation of alpha men, you know what I'm saying? Like legit, we have the most accomplished leaders. These are like, I can hold up pictures of accomplished people, you know what I'm saying? Like picture, like this is Martin Luther King and all this stuff. But then when they see a black man, they don't think Martin Luther King first instinct. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't think of our leaders. They don't think of our leaders when they first look at you. Like, you know, I think that's why I do wear letters. And, you know, I'll be wearing my letters and stuff because like it's almost like a billboard that says, look at me, I'm Philip Wilkerson, I'm a black male, I'm a member of Alpha, and I'm in the same class as these high achieving, excelling black men.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you know? I think also, to the point I was making about like, even if we take that microcosm and make it smaller, right? Yeah. We take society and make it smaller, just dwindle it down to our own communities. You know, we also are like subconsciously doing things so we can also have or be on par or even be able to just like give some kind of something to, you know, our black women too, right? So, I mean, being able to say, hey, like, you know, she's getting whatever degree, like I have this too. So like, I'm driven, I'm intelligent, like I'm smart. Like we're trying to account for all these different things so that we are not put into a marginalized group of people who like, you know, people don't want anything to do with. And I think also social media has also played a role in that too. Of like seeing different things and like things being more transparent, just like across the board. So that hearing like what you're telling me about that article doesn't really surprise me. And then also I think like as we get older, as I've gotten older, I've done a better job of being aware of, you know, when that's happening, in a sense of being able to like check my ego, right? Because the thing is, I don't know why it has a negative connotation, but your ego isn't always a bad, like a negative thing. But it does, like your ego does, you know, make you think X, Y, and Z when it always doesn't have to be that. So, you know, there's sometimes I'm just like, I really don't have to prove anything to anybody.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Especially when I've already proven that I can do X, Y, and Z. There's no reason to be like, there's no reason to feel as if I'm not good enough. You know, and I say that for any black person, but, you know, specifically those that are in those moments where like you're kind of like struggling, or even if you're in a headspace where it's like, all right, what's next? Like, let's enjoy what we're doing right now, right? Like, let's make sense of what we're doing, appreciate how important it is, how impactful it is, even if it doesn't matter to other people. Like, it matters to you, and that's all that matters right now. Because at some point you're going to be alone with your thoughts, and you need to be able to understand that, hey, I've done X, Y, and Z. I've laid it out. I've done what no one else has done in a certain amount of time, or this is why this is so important. And then just bask in that for a little bit. I'm not saying live in it forever, right? But I'm definitely saying that you have to enjoy those moments. And I don't think we do that. And I think that that's where, you know, that could come from. That pressure is crazy because it's something that's subconscious until somebody points it out to you. And you're like, oh, wow, I've been doing this. Is this what I've been doing?
Yeah, for sure. That's my mentors. I think that's another part of people checking me. Yeah. I always feel like, Phil, you know, you need to slow down, right? Like, for what? Like, but then I realized it's because externally they can see things that I didn't see about myself. Man, that's great, man. You dropping mad gems.
I had a senior manager tell me that, man. I had a senior manager last week tell me that, you know, she like congratulated me on getting promoted. She was like, you know, there's only like, because the hierarchy in my firm is like overall staff, senior manager, partner, right? But in there's like 3 different levels of each. So I literally went from staff to senior, and I like skipped 3 levels. And she's like, you know, that's like huge, right? You know, you need to like celebrate and enjoy that. I was like, yeah, I feel you, but I'm just like, I still got work to do right now. So,
yeah, exactly.
But no, I think that's important.
Yeesh. Young king right there, man. call you Samba. You know what I'm saying? Jesus. All right, so I did lie. I did say that the next part of the show is shout outs and plugs. But I mean, if you listen to my episode, it's ready for shot for shot. I get to ask you any random question. You get to ask me random question. You want to go first?
Okay.
I'll go first.
You go first. I got you.
All right. So you play basketball. Obviously, I'm really confused. I don't know if it's right now. Is this the playoffs for like last year or the new upcoming season? I'm so confused.
No. This is the playoffs from the season that got stopped.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I was drinking last night. I had no clue. I was like, I don't even know what's going on. I've been jumping in and watching these games. I don't know. I was like, this is the shortest season I've ever seen. They're already in playoffs. My man was like, Phil, did you realize that this is for last year? I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. Thank you for clarifying that. By the time this releases, we'll have our new champion with an asterisk on it. So let's put on our predictive hat. This is released in like October, because I have my show scheduled out.
Yeah.
But who is the champion of this shortened season? Who is the NBA champion and why?
That's a tough question. I honestly want to give it to the Clippers, only because I think that they're. It's not. I'm not a LA fan at all. But I definitely think that they have the pieces to beat any team. And I think that the East just isn't in a position to beat anybody in the West like that. I mean, I think 1 through 8 could beat every team in the East. So
okay,
1 through 8 in the
nice.
West could beat any team in the East. And I think there's only maybe a couple teams that could compete, which I'll say like the Celtics can definitely compete. Maybe the Bucks. The Bucks have a very interesting way of playing basketball, and I think Orlando showed yesterday that's not gonna work. Because Orlando's not beating anybody in the West. But I got to give it to the Clippers because I think right now, like the Trailblazers are going to give LA a run for their money, and then LA may struggle through that series, and then get to play, LA, the Clippers in the Western Conference Finals, and I think the Clippers will edge them out a little bit.
So we'll see. I mean, we say it right now on the podcast. When this is going to be released later, we'll see if his prediction came true about the Clippers.
Yeah, we'll see.
Shout out to Kawhi. What's that laugh? Whatever. I wish I had a soundtrack. That John, man, this dude, I think he's a robot. But
he's hilarious.
Besides that, what's it? Get my baby.
What it do, baby?
So I love it. So I'll put that in there. So what's your one question for me?
Okay. What do you think is the most important goal that you have for this upcoming year?
So for the 2020?
Yeah.
I guess for the finish out the year as we do, because I did definitely thought about that. Things I want to accomplish. I had to pivot. I had so many big goals and dreams that were not remote based. And then now I'm like, at which point is survival mode? I mean, particularly even with this podcast, I love to do the interviews in person. I had my in-person equipment. That was one of my goals this year, was to learn how to use my in-person equipment.
Okay.
And then edit the podcast better.
Okay.
But obviously I had to learn how to use Zoom to do this.
Yeah.
So I think pivoting, one of the things I want to end the year strong with is solidifying my leadership skills, particularly in a virtual space. I don't have in my actual 9 to 5, I don't have a supervisory role. I have one student I supervise, one. But I don't, like, if I went to a job interview today and they're like, what is your leadership? I could say supervising one student. So what I have done proactively is gone outside of my external role and joined, as you can see, committees and things like that, outside professional associations, leading committees to solidify or strengthen, not solidify, but enhance my leadership.
Okay. So
one of my goals for the end of the year is to, in those external leadership roles, be a better, more organized, by the book leader. I am the most random person you'll meet. Sometimes I shoot from the hip. Let me say, like this podcast, 90% of the time I shoot from the hip. So one of the things I want to finish out this year is actually being more organized, strategic leader. and had those experiences so that when someone says, here's a job description, I can say, yes, I was organized. I led a team. I delegated tasks, and be solid with that in more virtual space. So that is my goal for the end of 2020 and hopefully carry on into 2021.
Of course. Okay.
Hopefully. That's it. Damn, you try to ask me some deep questions. Yeah, baby. I need to get a laugh track for this. So this has been a great episode. I really enjoyed it. You're a very insightful young man. I keep on forgetting that I'm 35 and I don't know how old you are, like 22, 23.
I'm 20. I just turned 25 in April, so.
Okay, 10 years. All right, doesn't make me feel super old, but still does. You're wise beyond your years, young Padawan. That's Star Trek or Star Wars.
I love me some Star Wars.
Star Wars, young Padawan. So you're very wise. Keep that wisdom. You'll be 10 times wiser than me when you're 35, and I'll probably be going downhill from there. I think I peaked. But with that being said, I really enjoy having you on the podcast. Now, this is the part of the show. The stage is set. Platform is yours. Shout outs and plugs. So shout out anyone you want to show love to, anyone. And then plugs where the listeners can follow up with you directly on, how to follow up with you directly.
Sure.
So shout outs and plugs.
Sure. Shout outs and plugs. Definitely got to shout out my parents. I love them to death, and my siblings. They've all been an integral part of my growth and success. Definitely shout out my girlfriend Tibra. She is one of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life, and she's very intelligent, very smart, and very kind. She's like my person, but just like way less extra and extroverted. Yeah, I really do. Shout out to you for having me on here, my guy. I really appreciate it. Man, I feel like I'm missing a whole bunch of people. I should have wrote this down. And then I'll just say shout out to my support system. All of my mentors, all of my friends who take those late phone calls and take those Elgin questions, because I have usually I'm the one asking all the questions, so this is a change of scenery for me. And I think also shout out to everybody who is trying to be the best version of themselves for that moment and that time. And I definitely understand the struggle, because this is going to be a lifelong thing, right? Just trying to, self-improve and continue to get better. So shout out to everybody who's doing that. So yeah, that was my shout outs. Plugs. So obviously I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram. I'm mostly on Instagram though. My stories be pretty crazy. And it's literally just my name. So if you type in Elgin Jr., it should come up on everywhere. And then I'm also working, I've been doing a blog. It's called Dexter's Loves, like DXTERLOVES.com. It's a blog that talk about a whole bunch of different stuff. There's two writers for it, but I think I'm the only one who is out there, the person writing is out there. And we differentiate based off a thing at the bottom. So Dexter's my middle name.
Oh, I was about to say, I thought it was shout out to Dexter's Lab or something. I was like, damn, I like that cartoon too. Shout out to Dexter.
Dexter's my middle name.
Okay.
So I just use that, and I've been working on some new stuff. So I'll be putting some stuff out. But yeah, please definitely go there, leave comments, subscribe. That's kind of it for me.
That's love it. I didn't even know you had the blog. I'm about to subscribe myself. You got some hidden talent. Well, not really. I mean, you're very talented. This dude sing. And you say, I heard the singing. I'm not going to ask you to do that now. But that's our talented Renaissance man. And, as you know, he didn't shout out to the oldest and coldest, you know what I'm saying? Gang, gang.
I got to shout out A5A.
I don't think we said gang, gang, but whatever.
Definitely shout out to the 06, all the bros.
Yes, all the bros. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I learned some. I took some notes. That's what at least I do that organized. I took some notes. You dropped some gems. Definitely want to, keep you in the conversation, have you on again someday. But also I wanted to send, like I said, celebrate those wins. You are very inspiring. I can't believe I got these young leaders that I talk to and they think I got information to share. But I'll be looking at you guys like, dang, y'all doing it. You and Quentin and all the people that we connected through. through the
We
world of
definitely
alpha.
appreciate that. Not a
So,
doubt.
man, doing big things, big things.
Big things.
So, please, listeners, follow Elgin and all his platforms and the blog. Please connect with this young man. He's doing big things. Keep in contact. If you have anything that you want to connect with, the podcast is at Positive Philter on all the different platforms. And you can leave a voicemail at 571-336-6560. That's 571-336-6560. Spreading positivity is all that I ask. So please share this episode with your family and friends. Like and subscribe. Leave a rating or review on iTunes. Anything just to get this message out. And I really appreciate it. Elgin, it's been a great pleasure having you on the show. We'll keep you in contact. And thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to Positive Philter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity of Movement. Thanks for listening.